It's about looking at different circumstances that people with disabilities may find themselves in. Just to take an example, we're looking at access to buildings. Now, as a result of the changes that we'll introduce with the disability legislation, that will have a knock-on effect on the building regulations, for example, which we're looking at bringing into effect sometime in March, April, and that will mean that all new buildings, all new builds or anything that requires a new building application need to be completely accessible to people with disabilities. Now, when we're talking about people with disabilities, it's very easy for people to mistakenly think that we're talking about access to people with wheelchairs, but it's more than that, and it's more than just having and installing a ramp in properties. It's about looking at people who, in addition to physical disabilities, may also have sensory disabilities, may have visual impairment, may have hearing impairment. So it's not just one thing, and that's just one of the examples about the practical implementation that the new legislation will bring into effect. For the next year, we will be organising through the Ministry for Equality very intense training to make sure that both the public sector and people in the government departments who are charged with the duty to implement the legislation know exactly what's required of them. And similarly, as we train the public sector, we will be offering the training to the private sector as well to make sure that everything is happening hand in hand.
This was a 2011 manifesto commitment. In fact, the manifesto promised that it would be completed within the year. So why the delay?
Because it's been quite a complex piece of legislation. And while, yes, it was a timed manifesto commitment in our first manifesto, it's taken us a bit longer than we wanted to, but we have it now. It's now in bill format, and the important thing is that we now see it through. It's better to do things properly, and it may be that it's required a bit more time than we envisaged at the outset, but I'd much rather, and I feel more comfortable, particularly in a piece of legislation as important as this, to make sure that it's done properly. But having said that, while the bill itself hasn't been published until now, that's not to say that we haven't been in government working towards the ethos of the bill, because we've spent the last 5 years working very hard on implementing changes and improving the lives of people with disability in our policies and in our projects. So it's work that's been happening throughout anyway.